Emmanuel was born in a very poor family. His father was a struggling farmer who worked from dawn to dusk, and his mother sold vegetables by the roadside. They had little, but Emmanuel carried something greater than money, a burning vow in his heart. He often whispered to himself, "One day I'll be rich," not to show off, but to change lives. Every morning he ran barefoot to school with a torn bag hanging loosely from his shoulder. His books were old, his uniform faded, but his eyes glowed with determination. Yet school was never kind to him. While others seemed to understand easily, Emmanuel struggled to keep up. He couldn't define topics, couldn't memorize big words, and when teachers asked him questions, he froze. The class would burst into laughter, mocking him for what he lacked. But what they didn't see was the quiet brilliance behind his silence. Emmanuel didn't know how to define photosynthesis, but he knew that plants couldn't live without sunlight. He couldn't explain what hydraulics meant. But when the village water pipe broke, he was the one who figured out how to make it flow again. His intelligence was raw, shaped not by textbooks, but by life itself. Almost every term, Emmanuel was chased out of school for not paying fees. While his classmates studied comfortably, he carried loads at the market and sold firewood just to buy exercise books. Many nights he sat under a dim streetlight, reading borrowed pages and watching cars pass by. He often asked himself, "Why do some people drive cars and others like me can't even afford shoes?" That question became the seed of his purpose, to understand wealth, not just wish for it. The world kept reminding him of his place. Teachers said he wasn't serious. Students laughed that he would amount to nothing. But Emmanuel held on to one truth, that being poor wasn't the same as being hopeless. Deep down, he believed that knowledge wasn't only found in school lessons, but also in the lessons that life teaches through pain, failure, and survival. As he grew older, Emmanuel began to see life differently. He discovered that he had a gift, the gift of solving problems. He worked in a small mechanic shop and learned to repair broken things with little or no tools. When others gave up, he kept trying until things worked. His boss often asked how he managed, and Emmanuel would simply smile and say, "Tools don't solve problems, ideas do." From there, he started fixing phones and radios for people in the community. He saved every coin he made, no matter how small. Instead of wasting money, he invested in learning how businesses worked. He read books about entrepreneurship and watched how successful people thought. Life became his classroom, and every challenge was an exam he was determined to pass. He failed many times. Some days he couldn't eat. Other days his repairs went wrong, and people mocked him again. But failure only made him wiser. He kept going. He kept learning. Slowly, his small phone repair shop turned into something bigger. He began to design simple devices that made work easier for villagers. People started noticing his ideas. His creativity attracted attention beyond his town. With time, Emmanuel registered his own company, M-Tech Solutions, smart ideas for everyday problems. At first, it was just a small workshop, but his ideas grew faster than anyone expected. He hired young people who had no certificates, but had the hunger to learn. He believed that talent was everywhere, opportunity was not. He gave that opportunity to others. As his business grew, the same people who once mocked him came to seek jobs from him. Some of his old classmates, the ones who laughed when he couldn't define a topic, now called him Sir Emmanuel. The boy they laughed at had become the man they admired. He built schools, sponsored children, and created opportunities for his community. He never forgot where he came from. And whenever people asked him what his secret was, Emmanuel would smile and say, "School taught my classmates how to serve, but life taught me how to create opportunities. School taught them how to define problems, but life taught me how to solve them." He had learned more from being poor than he ever learned from a classroom. Poverty had been his first teacher, one that taught him how to survive, how to think, and how to dream. The pain of being chased out of school gave him the reason to build his own empire. The shame of being mocked gave him the fire to prove that greatness doesn't come from comfort. Years later, as he stood on the balcony of his tall office building, overlooking the city lights, Emmanuel remembered the boy who once studied under a streetlight. He smiled, knowing that the vow he made as a child had come true. He had become rich, not just in money, but in wisdom, impact, and gratitude. He often told his workers, "Success isn't in how many degrees you have, but how many problems you can solve. Don't let your background keep your back on the ground." And whenever young people came to him for advice, he would tell them, "Education is good. But real success comes when you learn to think for yourself, when you stop waiting for opportunities and start creating them." The story of Emmanuel spread far beyond his village. He became an inspiration to every child who felt left behind, every dreamer who was told they weren't good enough. People no longer remembered him as the poor boy who couldn't define topics. They remembered him as the visionary who redefined what success truly means. Emmanuel's life proved that you don't need to be the best in school to be the best in life. What matters is not where you start, but where you're heading. The difference between those who serve and those who lead is simple. Leaders learn from life, while others stop at lessons from books. In the end, Emmanuel always said one thing with pride: "I wasn't born rich, but I was born to make a difference." And that is the story of a boy who turned pain into purpose, poverty into power, and mockery into motivation. The boy they laughed at became the man they worked for.